What happens when idealism meets conquest, when freedom is forged in the fires of contradiction? This is the story of America, not just a tale of dates and wars, but a philosophical odyssey where the idea of liberty often clashed with the reality of power. Let's embark on a 10-minute journey through the history of the United States, not as a sequence of events, but as a living experiment in human potential and paradox. Before there was a country, before there was even a name for it, this land was home to countless cultures, beliefs, and ways of life. From the Mississippi Valley's mound builders to the intricate multi-story villages of the Pueblo, indigenous societies thrived with unique understandings of nature, spirit, and governance. Philosophically, these communities often viewed land not as property, but as shared existence. Harmony, not domination, was the aim. But this worldview would soon clash with a very different idea, one born from exploration and empire. Enter Columbus, not as a hero, but as a symbol of ambition untempered by empathy. His arrival in 1492 triggered not just colonization, but a crisis of coexistence. The Old World brought disease, steel, and doctrine. The New World, in turn, offered resources and resistance. Spain, France, the Netherlands, and Britain vied for pieces of the continent. They didn't just bring guns, they brought worldviews, Catholicism, capitalism, mercantilism, philosophies in their own right were imposed, often violently, upon the land and its people. By the 1600s, English settlers had carved out fragile footholds. Jamestown grew tobacco. New England grew restlessness. These settlers weren't just looking for land, they were looking for meaning. Many sought religious freedom, only to deny it to others once they arrived. This irony runs deep in American history. While proclaiming liberty, early Americans bound themselves to systems of inequality, slavery, exploitation, and conquest. As Enlightenment ideas swept across Europe, the colonies began to absorb them too. Thinkers like Locke and Rousseau whispered of rights, reason, and rebellion. By 1776, those whispers became a roar. Fed up with British taxation and neglect, the colonies declared independence. The Declaration of Independence didn't just break ties, it made a philosophical statement that all men are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights. But who counted as men? That was a question the new republic would struggle to answer. Still, the idea of a nation ruled by law, not kings, was radical. It gave birth to a constitution that attempted to balance freedom with order, individuality with unity. This was no utopia. It was a blueprint, a promise. And promises are easy to make, harder to keep. With independence came appetite. The new nation expanded westward, driven by manifest destiny, the belief that America was meant to stretch from ocean to ocean. But destiny for some meant destruction for others. Native nations were displaced. Mexico was invaded. Slavery expanded even as it divided. The philosophical contradiction sharpened. Could a nation committed to liberty also sustain bondage? This tension would soon erupt. The Civil War wasn't just about territory, it was about truth. Can a house divided against itself stand? The North and South clashed over the soul of the country. When Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, it wasn't just a military move, it was a moral one. The war tested whether a nation built on Enlightenment values could survive its own hypocrisy. When the Union won, slavery ended, but the scars would remain. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, America became an industrial giant and a global power. But power came at a cost: economic crashes, imperial ventures, and wars abroad. Domestically, movements for women's rights, civil rights, and labor rights sought to make the American promise real. In moments of darkness, depression, segregation, war, hope persisted. Voices like Martin Luther King Jr. reframed America's founding ideals not as fulfilled, but as still unfolding. The history of America is not the triumph of perfection, but the persistence of an idea: freedom, equality, democracy. These are not fixed destinations. They're ideals to be reached for, again and again. Perhaps, more than anything, the story of America is philosophical, not about what we are, but what we aspire to be.
Subscribe, Tune Trends for more videos like this.